Well, hello there. Hello, Facebook. Hello, YouTube. Because I will, of course, upload this to YouTube as well, even though I say I won't. This is another Hospital Porter Reacts video. So this time, I'm going to do TV. I've done all the movies, happiest, saddest, best horror, best sci-fi, etc. And now I'm going to do best best TV programs. Now, you might think it's a bit easier because the thing is, TV is turdcraft. It really is. Television is generally very, very bad, and it's getting worse. I would say probably television, as I said in my BBC talk, television it technically has increased enormously in quality. For example, television used to be just a small screen. I mean, I'm actually old enough to remember when the TV was like an 18-inch like box in the corner of your room. Now, you have flat screen TVs that cover entire walls. You have HD quality, high definition as it is. People are experimenting with 3D TV, things like that. Although not everyone likes that sort of thing. There are literally thousands of channels. When I was a kid, there were like 4 channels. Then Channel 5 got added. I remember that. And I remember when Channel 4 started. Even I am that old. Indeed, in terms of production funding, more money is spent on television productions than any other time in history. The amount of money spent on producing TV programs is now matching Hollywood. So TV programs are often as well budgeted and well funded as the big screen movies are. Yet, in terms of quality, in terms of artistic quality, television has gone downhill enormously. And I know that because all the most intelligent kind of people seem to like older TV. For example, you can always tell somebody, you can always tell a lot about somebody, actually, about whether they watch like contemporary dramas and sci-fi and comedy, or whether they prefer, for example, Faulty Towers or Star Trek or something from the past. Because really, and this malaise, of course, is affecting cinema as well. I think this is why they're doing so many remakes and things like that, because they're running out of ideas. Their creative power is waning, and the reason they're doing so many remakes and they're doing continuous sequels to franchises when they really shouldn't be, because the sequels are really awful. I think Star Wars, The Matrix, etc. That it's pretty clear that with this advancement in technology, very, very sadly, at the very moment this advancement in technology occurs, to allow us to enjoy television more than ever before, there's so little to enjoy. But not completely. Occasionally you get a gem in the dung heap. And I'm going to talk about a few of them tonight. But I'm going to talk about the dung heap as well later on, because I'm not going to do like best TV, worst TV in separate videos. I'm going to do them all together, if that's all right with you. My favourite let's just get straight down to it, shall we? My favourite TV show is Gone to Seed. Some of you might wonder why. Even when you watch the program, you may think, well, this is not really the thing I'd expect from you, Ben. And indeed, to be honest, if I saw it today, I probably wouldn't like it as much as I did when I saw it at the time. When it was released, which was in 1992, it came out by Central Films. It was written by Tony Grounds, who is a fantastic scriptwriter. He's done a lot of really, really good stuff. Excuse me. I was a very different person to what I am now, and my affection for this particular program, it's 56 minutes. It's 56 minute episodes. 6 of them, and it tells an amazing story. And my affection for it comes from the fact that I did see it at a time when I was very, very different as a person to what I am now. I'll say a bit more about that in a minute when I come to the end of this review of Gone to Seed. Gone to Seed, you may think it's an odd title. To go to seed, it's an idiom. It means to decline in appearance, status, utility due to lack of care. But also, gardeners use this term for allowing a bed or a garden to fallow. So no work's done, growth just rises naturally. and this can restore fertility when you want to do something else. It's a lot of, it's got quite a star-studded cast, and there's a lot of trivia associated with this. For example, this is the penultimate, not the I thought it was the last thing he ever did, but no, it's the second last thing he ever did, which is it's the second last role for the great Peter Cook, great comedian. Now, Peter Cook was a great comedy actor. He also did a sketch show with Dudley Moore that was very, very amusing, and he died in 1995, and he did one more thing after Gone to Seed. But he plays the principal antagonist who, like in all the best TV programs, has a human side. He's more of a kind of anti-hero. I find it difficult to deal with stories in which the bad guy is just kind of Machiavellian, which is why I felt a bit uncomfortable with my own character, Gerald Caxton, because in the Roswell trilogy, because he's a bit like that. My villain in Evansland, Emlyn-Jones, I much prefer, because he has like a soft side to him, you know. Even though he's a very, very destructive individual, he has a soft side for it. Another interesting little tidbit here. Fred Wood, you've probably never heard of him. I doubt if he's still alive, because he was born in 1922. He's been acting since 1946, and he's got hundreds and hundreds of. If you go to his IMDb, he's got like several hundred entries, but he's always uncredited. He's always an extra. Gone to Seed was his first ever credited role. You see him. He actually appears in the canteen scene in Star Wars. You can see him in several films, the Superman franchise and things like that. He's always one of these guys in the background. He's made a career out of it. He's got like a fan club. If you just Google his name, Fred Wood, he appears. He's very old in this, because obviously. And it was his, I think it might have been his last role, I don't know. He appears in adverts and things like that. So, Gone to Seed is basically a comedy drama. It's set in East London. It's contemporary, and it talks about, it's about set in a garden centre. There's a garden centre in East London run by somebody called Mag Plant. It's an appropriate name for someone who runs a garden centre. And it's a family business, and she runs it with her daughter Hilda, and she has two sons as well. They're triplets. They're all the same age. Montgomery, Winston, and Hilda. Montgomery, Monty as he's called. He's played by Jim Broadbent, and he works in the garden centre. But he's all kind of half-hearted within it. Hilda does all the real work, but he plays guitar in a country western band as well. And what I like about Monty, I mean, Monty's without a doubt my favourite character in the series. He's a visionary. He's a romantic. He talks in proverbs wherever he goes. Whenever he can, he speaks in proverbs, and he wants to take over he wants to be manager of the garden centre. At the beginning he induces his mother he tries to induce her to retire, which fails, even though she's turned 60. And he wants to take over as manager and turn the garden centre into a business he called the Plantation, which is like it's like a garden centre, but it has extra things like the band would perform on stage, and there'd be a lemonade fountain, there'd be a children's playground. And he's consumed by this vision. He even experiences hallucinations. And Hilda is sympathetic, but the other family members laugh at him. Disney and Millwall don't make me laugh, says his mother. But you know, I suppose he's such an idealist, and he's similar to me in that respect, but I think he's much more naive than I am. For example, he says at one point, decisions are being made by people with no vision. When are they going to cotton on? It's not about the fast buck anymore. It's about the quality. It's about the beauty. Do you want to tell him, or shall I? And Wesley Willis, as I said, is the bad guy. But he has as I said, he's a complicated thing, because eventually she does die. Mag, she actually dies eventually, and Monty and Hilda do take over. Winston, the third son, he's like an opposite of Monty. He's played by Warren Clark, and he was famous for being in A Clockwork Orange. Excuse me, A Clockwork Orange. And he's a very practical person, Very down to earth. He's completely separated from family. He's got a wife and kids. Doesn't have much to do with his family. But when the mother dies and Wesley Willis tries to take over the garden centre, he's haunted by the ghost of Mag Plant. It's really great. It's very well done, actually. Sheila Hancock plays Mag, and she comes out as this spectral monster. And it's like it's very Dickensian, because she haunts him. She haunts him continuously. It's very like Scrooge in The Christmas Carol. You can see it's been inspired by it, and of course Scrooge, it's set in the same place in London. And but Wesley Willis, he's so good, Peter Cook, you know. Mag, you hag, Mag, leave me alone, go away. And it's so quotable, this, you know. What merciful God would incarcerate me with this Hogarth collection of lowlifes? And he eventually sort of worms his way into the business. After even though he's being haunted by Mag, and is there a market price for happiness, he says, because you're right, all these people should be made to pay for such joy. And what he does is he and Winston collaborate to get basically to take over Hilda. They bully her basically. Hilda has a wonderful word actually because they take over the plant. They take over the plantation. They turn it into some kind of corporate commodity, and Hilda describes that as plasticification. That's a new. I don't think that's a word that exists anymore. And that's such a wonderful word, to plasticify something. And I've always used it ever since. But it's a perfect description of what Winston and Wesley Willis are doing to Monty's dream. And Monty, though, has gone away. Monty is broken-hearted after his dream woman he sees in his hallucinations. He finds her, but then she runs off with someone else. And he kind of goes hobo with the band. He says, "The Nashville Noise on tour. Let's leave the troubles of the world in our wake. We are the Bermondsey Nomads." And they just go off on a boat. It's very much like a kind of it's a kind of like a spiritual journey of escape. It's partly escape and spiritual journey, but of course he can't escape. Monty can't escape from his heartache, and this quest to find himself in it's a kind of midlife crisis kind of way leads him to an amazing person. He meets an amazing lady who looks just like his mother, but she's a lady who is determined to find a lost play of Shakespeare. She's convinced that William Shakespeare wrote a play that has never been published, and she wants to find the manuscript. And Monty at first thinks, obviously because she looks like his mum as well, that influenced him. Monty thinks he found a soulmate. This is a visionary, a fellow visionary, and their destinies are joined. And he says, "I'm going to help you find your play," but it turns out this lady's a deluded fantasist, and it turns out she's a bit dotty. She's a sweet lady, but she's a bit dotty. And Monty just, at that point, something breaks in Monty, and he goes home to face reality. But there's a twist in that tale. But I was a very different person. When in 1992, I watched this on TV, and it struck such a chord with me, and it still does, only because I can remember that feeling. If I saw it now, it probably wouldn't have that impact on me. But it's a tribute to nonconformism, and I knew that. I didn't have the vocabulary at the time to put into those words, but it actually did help me get through some of the toughest days of my life. It really did. And it's an antidote. It's an antidote to a lot of what you see on the mainstream media, especially another program I'm going to talk about later when I go into my worst TV programs. You see, I don't believe this is going to be controversial, but I've said it before. I do not believe the mainstream media is completely controlled by the Illuminati. So I've got a slight cough. It's not the coof. It can't be. It cannot be, because things like this wouldn't be produced. You've gone to see it's an anti-venom. It's an antidote to the venom of a lot of what's else in the mainstream media. And ironically, I'd call it the antithesis to another program which I hate, which is set in the same location in East London. You probably guess which one I'm talking about now. I'll be discussing that program later. But everything's inverted. Everything's inverted. For example, in the program I hate, social, nihilism and social Darwinism are triumphed. In Gone to Seed, they are not. For example, Wesley Willis and Winston, the Monty's brother and Willis, and also there's this bloke called Billy he's Willis's stepson, who also abuses Hilda. Although he changes. I mean, he develops a conscience and does a Paulian conversion. But the viewer is left in no doubt that what they do by abusing Hilda, who is a very Hilda's a sweet and rather malleable young woman, rather naive, and this goes back to my reply video to Stefan Molyneux. Which one was it? I think it was the nice guys one to Stefan Molyneux. There's the ethics of the program are very, very consistent. There's no doubt that what they do to Hilda is wrong. It's portrayed as immoral. She's an easily malleable. She's a very malleable person, very vulnerable, and she has this sweetness and amiability about her. And in this other program I'm going to talk about, she would be condemned. She would be castigated. The plot lines would essentially castigate her and punish her for her nature. But this program does not scorn her the way she is. Her personality doesn't change throughout this. She doesn't become bitter and resentful. She stays the same. Although she does change, as people do. All the characters actually go through transformations. So the characters do learn, and they adapt, and they develop as characters. The best characters should. But Hilda doesn't lose that amiability. She doesn't lose that nature. She doesn't lose that gentleness and kindness. When in this other program I'm going to talk about, she would be portrayed either as a punch bag and deserve to be scorned in that way, or would essentially put on a fake personality that was different. And Monty's also held in deep veneration. He's this romantic, idealistic person. But in almost in mainstream TV shows, he'd be, including the bad one I'm going to talk about, he'd be portrayed as a cipher of contempt. But in Gone to Seed, he's a heroic figure. His seeing of visions, his pursuit of dreams, his creative passion. I mean, Monty's dream sequences is actually they're my favourites. They're my favourite scenes. They're just wonderful. It takes a great spirit to imagine, when he says to Hilda, "Oh, the guy, this place, Hilda, this place could be an island of beauty amidst a sea of grey. People will come for miles around just for the experience. Our garden centre could bring happiness to everyone who ventures through our gates." Just imagine it: sunflowers, butterflies, ivy-clad gazebos. He celebrates. He's not put down because of that. There's a kind of Teletubbies like feel-good factor to Gone to Seed. And the scenes are always accompanied by the program's beautiful score, which is kind of like, indeed, the band Nashville Noise play it. It's kind of psychedelic country and western. It's lovely. And the antagonists are always portrayed as spoil sports. There's no doubt they're planned to not just what they do to Hilda, and they want to plasticify everything that's profound and noble in the world. Monty's dream. And in the end, when Monty caves in under the pressure, when he meets the lady who's looking for the lost Shakespeare play, which doesn't exist, he abandons his dreams, and he goes home, and he says, you see, I suppose in a conventional program that would be an admirable development. Yes, indeed. Well done, Monty. Golf clap all round for you. But when he returns home a changed man, he's ready to embrace the so-called real world. There's an amazing scene. There's a disastrous showdown because Hilda shoots somebody, and that's the final episode comes out of that. It comes from the fact that she shoots somebody. And Monty speaks the line. He speaks this amazing line. You all live in the real world. I've come to join you. And then the next moment you hear the gunshot. It's as if... it's so good. It's like... Monty's made a terrible mistake. That's the real world, the gunshot. And it's got such a powerful message, this program. And despite that, it's a very light-hearted production. There's no graphic sex or violence. It's perfectly suitable for all the family. There's no swearing in it. And there's serious and blithe elements that are perfectly balanced. It's not perfect. There's actually a major plot contradiction at one point, and I think they reuse. There's certain words such as dupe, and things like that. They reuse certain phrases a bit too much. But honestly, if Grounds had ironed out those little wrinkles, I wouldn't have loved this series one bit more. I really wouldn't have. Also, I used to drive my family crazy because I used to quote from it. They didn't know what I was quoting from. They didn't know I used to quote from this series, and I used to say things like, "I'll leave it all in your capable hands, Australian." And people just say, "What's he talking about? I'll leave it all in your capable hands, Australian." That is actually a quote from Gone to Seed, and I didn't explain it to them. I just let them watch it themselves. And all in all, there's actually a recurring theme in other works by Tony Grounds. You see the same thing. The dead return as ghosts to influence the living. Again, just like with Charles Dickens and A Christmas Carol. And there's a very good film actually called Last Christmas. I can't find it anywhere. It's a Christmas movie, as the title suggests. It was shown on TV one Christmas. I can't find it anywhere online or there's no DVD of it or anything. But it's really good. It's a very, very good story about a young boy whose father died, and he comes back as a ghost. And it's quite sad, really, but it's really, really well done. It's very moving. And then so there's this supernatural element to Gone to Seed, and there's this surreal element as well. Even leaving us, even outside the Gone to Seed thing, it's kind of like it has this sort of surreal element to it. It's quite Tim Burton-esque, actually. There's other things I like. I think I am a big Tim Burton fan, actually. I don't know if I'm imagining this sort of spiritual element to Gone to Seed, and did Grounds intend the serial to be like that? Because it's a gentle family comedy drama on one level. I'm sure maybe lots of people watched it and they just enjoyed it for that reason, but within its softly spoken words can be heard a rebel yell. The next program I'm going to talk about is probably my second favorite TV program. It's called again, it'll surprise you. It's called Voyage of the Unicorn. Now, I saw this one a lot later. It was about 2010, I think I saw this when it came out. I think it might have come out a few years earlier. But I got home from work one day, and my daughter, my 15-year-old daughter, she was 15 at the time, she rushed up to me and she waved this DVD in my face. "Dad, you've got to watch this." And she presented me with this DVD in a plain cardboard sleeve. And I know what it was, because in those days the newspapers used to give away free gifts of DVDs and things like that. That's the only way they could get people to buy them. And it was in this little thin cardboard sleeve. I still got it somewhere, although I brought another DVD of it. And let's watch it, Dad. And I saw Voyage of the Unicorn, this film. Let's watch it, Dad. Let's watch it, please. So I thought, all right, she likes this. I'm gonna keep her company while she watches something she likes. I mean, so I settled down. I'm prepared to be bored. It's all part of my paternal duty. Keeping her company while she watches something she likes. I've always done that since she was a baby. And about halfway through the film, she said, "Oh, I've had enough of this, Dad. Can we turn it off?" And I said, "No, I want to see all of it." Now, I've got to give a little warning here. If you go looking for a copy of Gone to Seed, there are there are two versions. There's a 132-minute feature cut floating around. Don't get that one. Get the full 3-hour miniseries, because it's like a 2-part miniseries. It's just 3 hours long, which is much better than the... Don't get the feature cut, because that's just all like edited down. It's definitely a close runner-up, I think, to Gone to Seed. It's a TV movie, and of course that's always like... I suppose there's a particular stylistic element to TV movies. As the name suggests, they're films, full-length feature films, or like in this case, a 2-part, 3-hour program. Although you can get like it's not like in 2 parts if you get the full-length DVD, which they're designed to be broadcast on TV, and so they have like ad breaks. You can see like when they cut to black, which is like an ad break, you know. It's normal. It comes from Canada. Was actually made in 2001, and it's the main character is Professor Alan Aisling, and he's played by Beau Bridges, and he's a university lecturer, and he has 2 daughters, Miranda and Cassandra. Miranda's a bit older; they're 16, and Cassandra's probably a couple of years younger. And his wife died a few months ago, before the start of the story, and he spends most of his time looking after his 2 daughters, and he teaches a course of comparative mythology at the university, but he's like Mr. Keating in Dead Poets Society. He's like really, really chirpy and imaginative and playful, and he gets into terrible trouble, of course, with the dean, with the headmaster, and things like that, like Mr. Keating does. Robin Williams' character in Dead Poets Society. Do watch Dead Poets Society as well if you can. That's one of the films that came close to being on my list of favourite movies, I'll tell you. And it's interesting because Miranda and Cassandra, they both lost their mother, and they deal with it in different ways. Miranda becomes very cynical and bitter, whereas Cassandra, like, she starts like looking through her mother's artwork, and she becomes very interested in thinking that she can contact her mother and speak to her mother psychically and things like that. The 2 girls deal with the whole thing very... it's very interesting how they do that. But to cut a long story short, they end up in some kind of strange world. They go into some kind of strange parallel universe, and where there's this place called Fairy Isle. It's a magic world. And Fairy Isle is like a Rivendell. It's like an idyll. It's like there's enchanted groves and dryads and butterflies, and it's ruled over by King Oberon and Queen Titania, which of course are characters from Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. But they say they're like spirits. They're like not aliens. They're like angelic spirits. This king and queen. And the king says at one point, "Mortals don't believe in magic. We can see into your world, but apparently you've turned your back on ours." It's interesting, isn't it? And they have this ship called the Unicorn, hence the title, and they're chased after by the trolls, who are these dark, crude, ugly, dirty things, and they have to find this thing called they have to find the skull of a dragon, which is it has magical power that protects Fairy Isle from the trolls, these evil trolls. The trolls are like really like horrible creatures, like the orcs from Tolkien, but they're quite funny as well. They can have their amusing thing, and it has these kind of these sort of very overpowering kind of like spiritual scenes, and very often they're balanced with something humorous as well. It's intended to be quite light-hearted again. It really is. And very intriguingly, one of the characters says to the leader of the troll, it's called Skotos. He says to Skotos, she says this: "You can change. I've read about trolls. There was even a time when you weren't all evil." And it's funny enough, Gandalf says that about the orcs in Lord of the Rings. They were once elves, but they fell from enlightenment. It's like Satan being a fallen angel. And there's always this idea that somehow the Voyage of the Unicorn universe is like a reflection of ours. It's almost like it's like a platonic mirror. Because one of the characters at one point says to Professor Aisling, he says this: I've spent little enough time in your world, Professor. Trolls are everywhere, different shapes and sizes, calling themselves different names, but trolls nonetheless. They like to tear things down, make everything the same, the way they like it. Could it be that the trolls in this series are an archetype of man fallen from grace? And because, in a sense, maybe trolls do exist in our world. They're the NPCs. They're the psychopaths. I don't know. And at one point, King Oberon warns this, because they're not just fighting to save Fairy Isle, they're fighting to save the world, our world, because the King Oberon says, this evil will spill into your world too. They have to find a dragon skull to stop the trolls' evil spilling to ours. I mean, that's very similar to the notion that people like Matthew Deleuze used to discuss. I don't think Matthew, I don't know what he does now, I've fallen out with him, but Matthew Deleuze used to talk about how dark forces from outside our world would influence our own place, our own world. It could be that Fairy Isle could be interpreted as a representation of the pre-Illuminati world, or maybe a future echo of the post-Illuminati world. I don't know. But you get that theme, you get that humanity versus bureaucracy thing, like you do in Avatar. The historian Michael Wood puts it very well. He talks about the end of sacred times, the triumph of profane times. And the trolls eventually do sack Fairy Isle. They attack Fairy Isle, and you think at one point, I mean, it's a bit of an emotional roller coaster, because at one point you think everything's over, the whole thing is over, but it's not. But you think it is. I don't want to spoil the ending, but so the fairy kingdom is like a reflection of our reality, maybe a reflection, or our reality is a reflection of that. I did have a kind of a Boudica moment, actually, when I saw it. I really did. When I can well imagine that Anglesey, when it fell to Roman legions in AD 60, was very similar. I can imagine the forces of that Illuminati occupied society destroying the sacred groves of the Druids and slaughtering anyone who hadn't fled. Not bad for a free gift from a Sunday tabloid, is it? It turned out actually that my daughter was very well aware when she bought this DVD home, and she got it from her mother's newspaper. She confessed afterwards that she wanted to show this to me because she had a bet with her friend that I would love it. I mean, it wasn't a bet really; it was a dead cert. She knows me too well. She just had a bet. Look, I'll show this to my dad. He's really going to love it. That's it. That's what she knows what I'm like. Yeah, but you might think that's a bit weird. I mean, see, I'm a grown man. I'm not a kid. If you watch the Voyage of the Unicorn, you will know that it is essentially aimed at. It's aimed at young children. I'd say probably 8 to 10-year-old children. So you might say, well, why do you like it, Ben? I do like some kid stuff. I think C.S. Lewis put it very well. The stupidest children are the most childish, and the stupidest adults are the most grown up. And the next one I want to talk to you about, of my favourite TV shows, is Good Omens. Now, Good Omens is much more recent. It's actually from 2019, so it's probably the most recent of the programmes I'm going to talk about. But it's a real jewel in the dung heap, this is. Now, I've got to thank Lisa of Christ Freedom Radio for bringing this up to me, because I never heard about this. I would not have heard about this unless she told me. Though, funnily enough, someone else has actually been watching this. I won't say who it is, because they might not. It was private email, but someone else you're familiar with who collaborates with me on Panmo TV has also started watching this and told me about it. And I said to her, yeah, I've already seen it. It's really, really good. Apparently there's a second season coming. I didn't know this because it looked like it was the end of the story, really, at the end of this particular season. But it's really, really good. It's a comedy miniseries, and it's based on a book co-authored by Terry Pratchett, who's a really good fantasy writer. He wrote what they call the Discworld novels. I've read one of those. They're quite good. And again, it's a joint BBC Amazon production, and I thought, oh dear. But so my hopes weren't high. But Lisa said, "Oh no, Ben, you've got to watch this. It's really good." And you know what? When I started watching it, those doubts were dispelled. I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. It's a 6-part serial, and it's about a very unusual friendship, actually, between an angel and a demon. Very witty, very well produced, very well written, thought-provoking. The angel is called Aziraphale, and he's played by Michael Sheen, the Welsh actor. And he's a sort of goody two-shoes of feet kind of person, as you'd expect an angel to be. And but because of a mishap in the process of creation, he ends up having to collude with a demon called Crowley, who's a sort of wisecracking man about town. He reminds me a bit of that other very charismatic horned one, played by Al Pacino in The Devil's Advocate. That's a good film. I'm a fan of man. I love that. But anyway, he's played by David Tennant of probably the last decent Doctor Who. After that, it really went downhill. But Aziraphale and Crowley have a really strange relationship because they're good friends. It's a kind of love-hate relationship, angel and demon. But they have to collaborate because there's lots of blunders in the run-up to Armageddon because the Antichrist is born and handed to the wrong parents. And the result is a rather abortive and botched apocalypse. It is a satire of Judeo-Christian eschatology. But what makes it fascinating is it's far less black and white than the mythology it lampoons. It's quite Gnostic, actually. Aziraphale, for example, is not pure lily-white goodness. Beneath his squeaky clean exterior, he can be deceptive, he can be manipulative, and he can be very passive-aggressive. He's a kind of treacly kind of person. And the other angels are as well. The other angels are quite funny, actually, because they're quite arrogant and rather snobbish people. Or angels. The angel Gabriel goes, I'm the angel fucking Gabriel. And conversely, Crowley is not pure evil. He's very fond of his angelic friend. He has a sense of fair play and justice. It's as if these two agents become more like each other as a result of their companionship. And that does indeed get them into a lot of trouble with their overlords or underlords in Crowley's case. It's like earthly experience. It breaks down the duality of heaven and hell. It's a kind of yin and yang blended into the Tao, which is very... It's not Western at all. It's more Oriental. You find it in Taoism, like the Tao of ancient China, and Hinduism and places like that. In fact, Aziraphale says to the Antichrist at one point when he's just 11 years old, "Some hoped you would be God incarnate, some hoped you would be devil incarnate, but you're better than both of those. You're human incarnate." It's very odd. There's no actual Messiah or second coming in this story, which is a rather interesting omission. But one of the things is that Aziraphale causes some problems in the Garden of Eden. Now, in Genesis 3:24, it reads, "The Lord God drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubim with flaming swords that turned in every direction to keep the man distant from the tree of life." Now, in this revised scripture, Aziraphale gives the flaming sword to Adam. It's really interesting because later on the sword comes back again when the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse turn up. I won't spoil it for you, but that's an astounding variation on the perennial tale, because it's more like the weapon. It's more like the legend of Prometheus, the weapon of Promethean divinity from ancient Greece. The man who gave he was the Titan who gave the gods fire, who gave the fire of the gods to man. In this case, Aziraphale plays that role. He gives the divine fire and puts it in the hands of man, which allows man to destroy the forces of darkness without the help of God. How strange, isn't it? And another good thing, there's very little political correctness in it. There's a couple of elements you might think are a bit culturally Marxist, but I didn't interpret them that way. I think it's not woke. That's another good thing about it. When I saw it was from the BBC, I thought it's going to be as woke as hell, but it's not. Other interesting thing, the demons are portrayed as having these little small animals attached to their heads or their backs. And usually these are reptilians or toads or insectoids, and I do wonder where the program makers got that idea from. It reminds me of what Miles Johnston talks about with the Scuttlers. It's extremely it's so well scripted. As a writer myself, I really admire a good script. I mean, a classic line is, Crowley accuses Aziraphale of being holier than thou, and the angel replies, but Crowley, I am holier than you, and that I am holier than thou. That's the whole point. It's just painfully funny. It's actually very Tim Burton-esque. As I said, like Gone to Seed, it has that Tim Burton feel to it. It's superb. It really, really is. Now, my third favourite series is a science fiction one, and it's called Blake 7. Now, a lot of people in the truth movement go on about Blake 7. It's making a bit of a comeback, actually, and the online streams and the DVD. I think you don't get DVDs much anymore. I have got the DVD of the series, but it's really big on streaming sites. And a lot of people who watch it are people like who are waking up. But it's quite old. It ran from 1978 to 1981 in 4 seasons. And I did watch it as a small child at the time, but I was too young really to understand it. It's only when I rewatched it as an adult I really got the plot, what it's all about. It's been called Britain's Star Trek, and there's lots of. That's a bad description, actually. There's lots of comparisons between Blake 7 and Star Trek, but it's very different from Star Trek. Now, both series are set in the space and in the future, but Star Trek is actually predates Blake 7 by a decade. It has slightly better special effects as well, which is always a bit of a joke. But Star Trek paints a very optimistic view of the future, because in Star Trek, Earth is a political paradise. The only violence comes from hostile aliens like the Klingons. Now, Blake 7 is something very different. It's deeply dystopian. It's set in the universe in the future is ruled by this thing called the Federation, which is an Orwellian superstate, rather like imagine the European Union gone crazy and gone out into space. Just like that. The crew of the Enterprise are very cosmopolitan. There's like men and women in equal numbers. There's many races. It's some people have denounced Star Trek as communist propaganda, and I don't think that's quite fair. But you do get things like there's not only an alien from the planet Vulcan, but there's a Russian guy, a Japanese guy, a Scotsman, and a black woman who speaks Swahili. Uhura does. The Enterprise complement wear very egalitarian uniforms with only very small badges of rank, and they enjoy a very easygoing camaraderie. But the crew of the Liberator, this spaceship in Blake 7, they're very dysfunctional, which makes them far more interesting. And there's one of them called Avon, who is a complete cad. He's a truly almost a psychopathic character, which is weird because he's a very, very good character. The characterization is excellent, yet under the surface there's more to him than that. Blake 7 was very low budget. It became famous for its homespun special effects and production design. The bulkheads of the spacecraft were wobbled when they were touched because they were obviously made of cardboard. But I think Blake 7 has a very important message for science fiction. If you have a good storyline with good characters and good scripting, you don't need fancy special effects. Conversely, if you have a crap storyline, shallow characters, and really lame writing, then big budget special effects will not save it. And of course, the obvious one that comes to mind is one of my worst films, Independence Day. And the themes of the storylines within the story arc of the entire series and the individual episodes are really interesting for a conspiracy theorist or someone who appreciates the kind of Orwellian dystopian society. It's very, very inspired by 1984. Very inspired by that indeed. It is literally like Big Brother in space. So do watch this one. If you like, I reckon I'd say if you really like this channel, you'll probably like Blake 7. And the next favourite I want to bring up, I don't know if I'm putting these. I think Gone to Seed and Voyage of the Unicorn I kind of put in order. All the others are really, I don't think, in any particular order. Let's say they're all my third favourites. And just say 3A, 3B, 3C. It is a program called The Prisoner. Now, you'll be familiar with The Prisoner if you watch my Alt-Tech exclusives, because, of course, in my last Alt-Tech exclusives, I quoted the main character in The Prisoner in my speech in Oxford at Bond Square. Because Prisoner is very relevant. It has a lot of countercultural themes. It's called The Prisoner because it is about a man who was imprisoned. This is a character whose name we never learn. He's played by Patrick McGoohan. This is a 1967 TV series, which 17 had it was 17 episodes, although some of the episodes are a bit weird. Like there's one episode that's kind of a flashback, and there's this other kind of really surreal one set in the Wild West, and I never quite got that. But it's a kind of psychological thriller. Patrick McGoohan's character, the unnamed character, is a intelligence officer for an unnamed secret agency, spy agency. I mean, it's the theme, the beginning of it's set in London, so I assume it's MI6 or MI5, or GCHQ maybe. And it's he tries to resign. He says to them, "I'm going to resign." And what happens is he quits his job with the agency, goes home, and then someone enters his home and knocks him out with stun gas. He's put to sleep with this gas, and then he wakes up in this very strange place. It's called the Village, and it's rather surreal sort of theme park where everyone has numbers. No one has names, they just have numbers, and they wear strange clothes, and they just go around, they play games, and they have a kind of carefree life. They play games and things like that. They're ruled over by someone called Number 2. He's the leader. Who's number 1? That's the question. The first thing Number 6 asks. He's called Number 6. He's given the number 6. And when he enters this society. And his first question is, who is number 1? And then the Number 2 just replies, you are Number 6. You do find out who Number 1 is in the end. It's quite amazing. I won't spoil it for you. But after he recovers from this knockout gas, he does his best to try and escape. Now, there's this big ball thing, like a bouncy ball, which can kill or incapacitate a person, because he tries to escape from this village, which is like a seaside village. It's actually filmed in Portmeirion in North Wales. You can actually go there. The set is still there. And he tries to run across the beach to get away from the village, and there's this big bouncy rubber ball that chases after him and brings him back. And you can't escape that way. And the entire series is about his attempts to escape from the village. And what's interesting is what the plan is. For some reason, they just want to know why he resigned. They've taken him there to kind of mentally torture him until he confesses to them exactly why he resigned. And his battle throughout the entire series is firstly to try and escape from the village, and secondly to maintain his own sanity with all these psychological attacks from the other people, the other numbers at the village. The other people are simply they're like staff. Some of them you get the impression they are fellow prisoners, but most of them are like warders. It's very, very good. And in the end, of course, he does escape. I won't spoil it for you, but he does escape. Very, very interesting. Lots of famous actors in it. Now, the Number 2 is always changed. There's always a different Number 2 for every episode for some reason. But yeah, it's a very, very good series. And you can. I think most of them are on YouTube. Actually, they used to be on YouTube. But again, if you're interested in if you're interested in free thinking and psychological warfare and counter psychological warfare, this is the program for you. It really is. And now we're going to come on to soap operas, and I'm not a fan of soap operas, but before I come on to the one I really can't stand, which I'll reveal to you very shortly, although you've probably guessed the one I'm talking about, I want to talk to you about one soap opera I really love. It's Prisoner Cell Block H. Now, Prisoner Cell Block H, Prisoner was the original title. It was actually called Prisoner Cell Block H when it came over to Britain, because so it wouldn't be confused with the program I've just been talking about, The Prisoner. And it's quite, it's one of these things that the critics always take the piss out of it, because it had very, very bad reviews from the critics. They trash it for its, what they called its bad acting, for the bad production design and things like that. It's very, very it's very, very what's the word? It's very, very, the sort of snobbish North London set don't like this. You know, the Guardian critics will always slate it as really terrible. But it's actually really, really, I think it's certainly the best soap opera I've ever seen. That's not saying much, I know, but this is different. This is very, very different to most soap operas. It ran from 1979 to 1986. All in all, there were 692 episodes, so it was quite a long-running soap opera. And it's, despite its, what some people consider its bad side, its technical poor quality, it has a cult following, of which I'm a part. It has the most unusual setting, actually. It's set in a women's prison in Australia. And although there are many, many characters outside the prison as well, and there's the warders are also major characters within the series. It's about how these female prisoners cope with being in prison, how they deal with elements of their own lives, with their past, their relationships, their children. Some of them, for example, have trouble seeing their children. Others have problems with their relationships, their husbands and boyfriends when they're in jail. And I don't think the acting is bad. I think the acting is very good. The characters are very, very real to me. Some of them go through the entire series almost. There's only one character, incidentally, who went through the entire series as the same actress, and that was Meg Morris, one of the warders, played by Elspeth Ballantyne. Australia is famous because they have so few actors. You have like about 24 of them, and they keep recycling them. So if you watch like Neighbours, you will see most of the cast of Prisoner in Neighbours as well. And there's several other. I mean, there's several other. Some, you know, not all the Australian actors do the soap circuit. I mean, you do see like a young Paul Hogan in there and a young Mel Gibson. They appear in small roles, so it's quite good for celebrity spotting as well. I think Prisoner is actually really good. Now, Prisoner, it has its funny side. I mean, there's Lizzie Birdsworth, who's the old matriarch of the prison, who's like really sweet. She's this sweet old lady. And there's obviously some nasty characters, nasty prisoners who are abusive. One inmate in particular is particularly cruel. Her name is Nola Mackenzie. She actually kills one of the other women by drowning her in a wash basin, because she wants to be prosecuted for murder in Victoria, the state she's in, because she's from Western Australia. She wants to be prosecuted. If she's prosecuted for a murder in Victoria, she can't be extradited to Western Australia, where she's already on death row. She's going to face the hanging, because they still have hanging there. I don't know if they still do. But so she kills another prisoner called Paddy Lawson, a young woman, drowns her. Totally, utterly ruthless she is, Nola Mackenzie. There's a battle of good and evil within Prisoner, a really considerable battle. The good characters versus the bad characters. B. Smith is like the principal leader. They call him top dog. She's not always top dog. That is what they call the daddy in British prisons, in male prisons. But she's like most of the time she's the top dog, and she's a good woman. I think she's a very good actress. She has her own heartbreak to do with her daughter and things like that. She's in prison for killing her husband. But there is a lot of tragedy in Prisoner too. And there's one I remember very well was someone called Pixie Mason. This lovely, really sweet-natured young woman she was in prison for bigamy, I remember, because she got married twice. And I won't tell you what it's about because it's just too upsetting, but she undergoes a horrifically torturing experience, and she becomes catatonic, and she's transferred to a hospital, and you never hear from her again. I would like to be able to say, that the person who hurt her got their just desserts, but they don't. And we never hear from Pixie Mason again. I honestly shed tears at that moment. I really did. I cried my eyes out. You know, I shed quite a few acceptable alpha male tears when I at that scene. I remember. So that's literally, I think that's the only soap opera I can say anything good about. All the others are bad. Now, you probably, as I said, you know already probably what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to now go on to the worst TV programs, the worst TV series, and so one of the worst programs I've ever seen. I don't actually have an actual worst program. I think there's so many. I can make a 3-hour video about all the worst TV shows in the world. And it would drive me nuts. It would drive me insane. The thing is, I hardly ever watch TV now. I mean, there's a TV in my house, but I hardly ever use it. I mean, Akmat and Hossan are always on it, and you know, I don't see any point. If I lived here alone, I wouldn't have a TV because 99% of it is utter crap. The 1% worth watching always ends up online. So what's the point? What's the point of having a bloody TV? It's useless. So one of the worst programs I've ever seen is a soap opera. I hate it. I used to watch it. I don't anymore. It's called, of course, EastEnders. Now, EastEnders. Where do I start? I'd like to say that everyone else hates it as much as I do, but they don't. It's one of the most popular programs on TV. It actually has. It's not getting as many views as it used to. I mean, it peaked in a sort of, according to the graph, it sort of peaked in the late 90s. When it received double figures every week. You know, in 1993 as well, it received over 10 million views. It's per episode. That's depressing, isn't it? All through the 80s, it was also enormously popular. It has gone down a bit, but it's set in East London, like Gone to Seed, contemporary. It's been running since 1985. It's quite an old one. I mean, it's not quite as old as Coronation Street. That's been running since since the mid 60s. But EastEnders is a close second, I think, to Coronation Street. And it's not a happy soap opera. It's actually it deals with an awful lot of what you call controversial or taboo subjects. I remember when it started in the 80s, it dealt with teenage pregnancy, homosexuality, things like that. It also deals with things such as child abuse, violence, rape, stuff like that. It's actually quite dark. First I should say that it's when it started, it was quite good. The first decade of EastEnders was very good. I remember watching it and enjoying it and thinking it was pretty good. It went downhill quite considerably. And I remember and indeed, I'm pleased to say the viewing figures do kind of reflect that. It does appear if you turn the viewing figure year by year into a graph, you'll find that. Just go back to the chart now. It starts off with like double figure viewing, and then round about 1994, it starts to go downhill. It goes down and down and down until you get to it's 4.7 million views per episode today in 2020, which is its lowest. I'm not, Mary Whitehouse didn't like it. She was one of the first people to speak out against it. Now, Mary Whitehouse. She was the woman you love to hate when she was around. But you know, I actually didn't. You know, I've actually looked back on her and realised she was kind of a prophet of our times, because she was always complaining about, for example, adult themes on children's TV shows. And of course, that's now everywhere, isn't it? But it is incredibly. I found it incredibly depressing. I found it soul destroying. Of course, Prisoner has tragedy in it as well. But with EastEnders, the tragedy is mixed with kind of it's mixed with a kind of moral nihilism and I think pseudo psychopathy. And I nickname it Tavistock Enders because I think it probably is being used to program people. Do you remember when I took my trip to I don't know if the video's still online. I had to delete quite a lot of videos because I collaborated with someone who turned against me. But I did go to the Tavistock Institute headquarters, and I yelled through the window, "Bring back Peggy Mitchell! Bring back Peggy Mitchell!" Peggy Mitchell was one of the good characters, Barbara Windsor's character. So everyone said that, you see, that this was all too racy, and like I say, it's very depressing. There's a lot of it's very depressing. Brian Gerrish actually said that EastEnders is meant to be depressing, and it bloody is. Maybe he's right, you see. Maybe it is literally common purpose. Just attacking us. What does Andy Roberts said? Not Andy Roberts, what's his name? Andy Thomas. Andy Roberts. I'm going to get those two mixed up. Andy Thomas said, everything is designed to break our spirit. And I think EastEnders is spirit breaking. I can't watch it now. I went to... This is very sad, actually, but my daughter watches it. I went to her house, and she was there with her housemates, and they were all watching this, and her boyfriend and everyone. And it's like... And it was like there. It's sitting... It's like the TV's there in front of me, and EastEnders is on. I literally felt like I was being attacked. I wasn't even watching it. I was talking to her, but I could feel almost like dark vibes radiating out of the TV towards me. What was it? The metaphor Richard D. Hall uses? It's like having a sewer in your front room, a sewer for the mind. And I just thought, she's. It is like you just imagine if you are the sort of person who watches that every day, like she does. And I can't tell her not to. She's too old for me to boss her around. She turns 27 in a few weeks. I can't boss her around. I can't tell her what to do. But just imagine if you just sit in front of that every day, and you're watching all the other slurry that comes through on our TV screens, and you're just watching that all the time. How privileged I am not to be exposed to that, but I've chosen not to expose myself to it. I think EastEnders is it's very like what I said. Do you remember I'm referring back to my Nice Guys video. I replied to Stephen the Nice Guys video. The Nice Guys video replied to Stefan Molyneux, because the characters in EastEnders, there's anyone who shows any kind of empathy is trodden upon immediately. They are put down, they are basically attacked, they are humiliated. It's like every single successful character in EastEnders is pseudo-psychopathic and basically NPC nihilistic. It's and that to me is that to me may be deliberate. I mean, there's lots of like characters who are loving and caring, and they get involved with people who are really, really nice. They meet a man or woman and they fall in love, and then it turns out that the man or woman is abusing their partner, things like that. And unlike with Gone to Seed, and as I said, Gone to Seed is essentially an inversion of EastEnders. Unlike with Gone to Seed, the characters who behave in that terrible way towards people are celebrated. They are lauded. They are the heroes. They are the heroes for abusing other people. And it is justified simply by saying, well, those people deserve it because they're vulnerable. Because they can be abused, they should be abused. And some of you may agree with that. Some of you may think, well, it's survival of the fittest, man. I don't want to do a Charles impression now. Survival of the fittest. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there, you know. But, and funnily enough, there's cultural Marxism in EastEnders too. It combines social Darwinism and cultural Marxism. It's incredible. I don't know of any other propaganda creation that does that. It's obviously made by people who know what they're doing. I wouldn't be surprised if Isabel Menzies-Lythe wrote some of the episodes herself. It's the list of awards and nominations for EastEnders. Oh, dearie me. Best drama series, best soap, best continuing drama, best actress. These are all BAFTAs. Radio Times Audience Award, Soap Opera and Continuing Drama Award, Virgin Must See Moment, National Television. Those are the BAFTAs. British Academy. That's the British Academy of Film and Television. Then there's National Television Awards, Most Popular Soap Opera, Most Popular Actor, Most Popular Newcomer, Most Popular Serial Drama. Yeah, and it keeps going on, over and over again. The critics love EastEnders. Goodness me. I really, it's one of these weird things when, if you love something that everyone else hates, are you going crazy or are they? All right, I'm only going to cover 2 more programs, and these 2 programs come into one. Really, they in fact, they are Casualty and Holby City, and I'm going to treat them just as a single one under the title of Casualty because one is a spin-off series from the other. Yeah, so Casualty is the other one of my worst programs. Now, I don't really have a lot to say about Casualty and Holby City, other than it is very similar to EastEnders. It's not a soap opera. It does have seasons, so it goes from one season to another. I think there are about 20 episodes per season or something, and it does one a year. When you're in the middle of it, it can feel very much like a soap. And it has a soap-like structure in terms of there are different episodes with different... There are different episodes we have... Sorry, what I'm going to say. It's not like a soap, in the sense that there are different episodes with different themes and different storylines within the episode. However, there is a story arc that covers an entire season, indeed the entire series, rather like a soap opera. But it has a lot of the same themes you find in EastEnders. One thing it does lay on, it lays on the kind of... excuse me. It lays on the middle-class guilt a lot as well. It's one thing that socialists love to do, is they love to denigrate the rich. And by rich, it just simply may mean someone with a job who's been successful enough to buy a house or something. All communist societies turn against those kinds of people. And now EastEnders does this as well. In fact, in occasional plotlines, for example, there's one character who goes homeless for a few months, and there's a kind of like a spin-off series of storylines associated with her. And there's a lot of that in there. And it ties in directly with my video I made about homeless people, if you remember that. My argument with a homeless person video. But Casualty and Holby City do this all the time really badly. If you are not basically a down and out living on benefits, which is how the government want us. They want us dependent on them, you see. If you're not one of these people, then you're horrible. You should feel guilty. And Casualty and Holby City do that all the time. And so, and it also has the nihilism, the social Darwinism, and indeed a fair bit of cultural Marxism too. In that way, it's like EastEnders. But the real big reason I don't like Casualty in Holby City is the way it portrays hospital porters. It portrays us with this incredibly patronising attitude. The first major character who was a porter was called Jimmy. He's played by Robson Green. I was just sort of like I'd been in portering maybe about 2 years by that time, and I remember cringing at the time, even though I couldn't quite articulate what was wrong. But he used to go around going, "Oh, I wish I was a nurse. I wish I was a nurse. I wish I wasn't. Oh, I'm only a porter. I wish I wasn't only a porter." And I remember thinking, is it really that? At the time, I hadn't gone into my full porter's pride and dignity mode, but I remember thinking, is it bad to be a porter? I'm a hospital porter. I don't think I'm bad. You see, the storylines go on and on. In the end, he does the sensible thing. He gets out of portering and trains to be a nurse. And I don't have a problem if people want to do that. I don't have a problem. What I have a problem with is this essentially being a mandate. This ties into one of my... I can't remember which Theo's video it was. You find it, where I was going on about the people who popped the question. That if you're a hospital porter and you're proud to be a hospital porter, there's something wrong with you. And people are offended by it, even though nothing really makes them the injured party in that situation. And they have to browbeat you and control you and chivvy and chase you and corral you out of hospital portering into becoming an ODP or a theatre nurse or something, or into nursing or something else, or some other PAM. And I loathe that. I loathe it when people do that. I don't understand why they do it. Well, I think deep down there is this desire to control others. It does happen, isn't it? It does happen. I mean, I don't know. I sometimes wonder I'm being a little bit too hard on these things. For example, I loved Prisoner Cell Blockade. People criticise me and saying, "Why do you like that? It's so lowbrow." And I say that up to other people because I sometimes say to people, "Oh, you like that, and that's really lowbrow." But you know, this takes me back to what I said earlier about pseudo-intellectual films. Do you remember my worst videos? My worst movies video where the Hospital Report Reacts, where I talked about Crash being very pseudo-intellectual. Could that be applied to soap operas and lowbrow TV? You know, these programs I call trash. You know, maybe it could be that the pseudo-intellectual stuff, what I call pseudo-intellectual, goes over my head. Like Crash might be it may be really profound, man. I dig it, man. I really dig the message, man. And I can't, simply because, you know, I don't have the intelligence to understand these gallant gallstone-like productions. My confusion and my miscomprehension is a sign simply that I'm not intelligent enough. But could it be that some things go under my head? Could it be that some of these lowbrow TV series they have qualities that I don't perceive and other people do, and that I'm kind of being a bit unfair on them? I don't know. Anyway, that's kind of an aside, isn't it? I got sidetracked there. Yeah. Prisoner. Casualty in Holby City. I think I made my point there, and I won't repeat points I made in my St. Theo's videos, but you know, I don't like seeing hospital porters portrayed like that. There's a lot more I could say. I could talk to you forever about bad TV, which I have seen, but you know, I don't want to be an analyst of bad TV because it could just get you down. I know, but there's a guy on YouTube, or he used to be on YouTube. He's been banned. Who was saying was it Millennial Woes? I can't remember, but they were saying I'm going to watch every single episode of the new Doctor Who with Jodie Whittaker, and I'm going to analyse the themes in every single one. And I thought, why? Why put yourself through that? You know what it's going to be about. You know what it's going to be like. It's going to be white men are evil, white men are evil, white men are evil. Episode 2, white men are still evil, white men are even more evil. You know, you've got to manage your exposure to these horrors. You know, we all know we could go on forever ad nauseum about this stuff, and I'm sure if we had time, we could sit down, we could watch TV non-stop, we could pick out all the horrible themes about, you know, these horrible violent themes which I've just described, this cultural Marxism, and sort of write long treatises about it. But why? We know they're there, and what will that do to your morale if you do that? Which is why I don't want to go on about bad TV, because I've only watched a certain amount of bad TV and I just switch the bastard off. Because most TV is bad. I mean, there are other good TV shows I could talk about, and I haven't mentioned in this video. For example, The Grimleys. The Grimleys is a great series. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Look it up, The Grimleys. It's on YouTube, actually, now. And that's a wonderful, wonderful sort of comedy drama I love. I don't have time to talk about it in this program, on this particular video. Maybe I'll bring it up in a future one. I did do a review on a Panwo written. But anyway, guys, that is TV programs. Our Hospital Porter Reacts. I don't think I'll be able to think of anything else. I've done movies, I've done TV programs, radio shows. Well, funny enough, I am a big radio listener now. When I was a kid, my dad used to listen to the radio, and I watched TV, and I thought, what's the point of listening to radio? You can't see anything. There's no pictures. And now, of course, I hate TV and I love radio. My favourite radio shows. Maybe I'll do. Well, you'll guess which ones they are. You know, Coast to Coast, things like that. It's obvious the kind of radio shows I like, isn't it? And so I probably won't bother doing that. Anyway, I think I'm going to have to do a comments reply video at some point, but it probably won't be till next weekend because I've got too much to do this week. But I do have to. I think it's time for another comments reply video. That will probably be my next video. Yes, we have disclosure, of course. Oh, I've got to do another disclosure video as well. Oh, for those of you, the tiny number of you who are interested in, who actually read a Panmo voice, because it's only a tiny fraction of you. But you know, I've got some good articles on there you might want to have a look at. By the way, I actually there are things I put on her Panmo voice I don't put on her Panmo TV. So I think it's a bit of a shame that, you know, hundreds and hundreds of you, sometimes thousands, watch her Panmo TV. Tiny fraction of that read her Panmo voice. So check out these articles here. So I've got Simon Parkes' Innocence. You'll like that one. That's a lot of drama in that one. Craig Charles, UFO conspiracies, Skeptic Copium, all kinds of things. Oh, my Bowler Hat Man videos. I put a notice for my Bowler Hat Man video. Oh, by the way, that's one more thing I've got to say before I go. For you guys on Facebook, I know some of you on Facebook, some of you on YouTube, wherever you're watching this. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who supported me in my debate with Bowler Hat Man. No doubt he will claim victory, but I think I won that debate. And some of you were the live chat. Somebody was informing me that people were being really nasty to me in the live chat. I'm glad I didn't see it because I can't. I'm concentrating on my debate with Bolly. But the live chat's not visible. I don't know if the live chat's visible. I'm not going to go through it. But I know some of you were there and you were sticking up for me. So thank you very much. Will I go back and do another interview with Bolly? Probably, yeah, if you wanted me to. I probably would. Anyway, that's the end of TV programs. A Hospital Porter Reacts. See you again soon.